I'm a bit of a normie when it comes down to projectors. I love them to bits, but I don't quite know all the technology that goes behind them. That said, there are certain things about certain projectors that impress me, whether that's the portability, the raw power around it, any sort of unique features that are, standout pieces. Now, this piece that I have here is the BenQ X300G, and this one is actually the little brother to the X3100i that I reviewed not too long ago, and that was an impressive piece of technology. And this one is supposed to be similar, smaller, not as beefed up, but for me at least, it's a little bit more impressive. Now for me, I don't have a TV in my bedroom, so between trying to find a moment alone inside my house of chaos between a toddler and a newborn kid, I might be a little bit extra biased towards this one being a little bit more excited. Now what makes this one special for me is a bit of a mix of things, but for me it's the raw power coming in with the actual portability of this thing. It's tiny as hell. Honestly, for such a tiny package, not only does it give you that 4K at 60 Hz, but for the gamer nuts out there like myself, this can give you 1440p or 1080p at 120 Hz, and even a ballistic 1080p at 240 Hz for you competitive PC players. Now sure, there's a lot of projectors that will give you all of that as well, but none of them are particularly as small as this one, which is what makes it more exciting for me. Now, if you're like me, chances are you might throw your back out with a hard sneeze, and that also means you probably remember what a GameCube is. Now this is just a little bit bigger than a GameCube, but it has all that power of 4K high refresh behind it. So now for me at least, I'll be using the HDMI port for either my gaming PC or PlayStation 5 whenever I really do want to get down with gaming. But something I've never really seen on a projector before is actually a Type-C port, which I could use for either my MacBook, iPad, or Nintendo Switch. And if that isn't enough here, you still have a USB Type-A port on the side, which you can use for any sort of external storage or other content. And again, wildly enough, this entire thing fits inside a backpack as you would a GameCube, so if you are the neighborhood movie guy or trying to catch some Mario Kart with the homies, this is easily the projector to have. Plus, I kind of dig the design. It's really easy on the eyes. Now, the sun's not down just yet, but I do want to fire this thing up to get right into it, so let's go. Now, there's a bunch of ways you can set this projector up. Since it is a short throw projector, meaning you don't have to put it far away from the wall, you can put it closer to the wall, which is pretty sweet. And it also has auto 3D keystoning and auto focus. Now, in this situation, I'm actually putting it on a tripod because why not? There we go. Now it's pretty much going to give you a good setup regardless of where you are, which is pretty sweet due to that auto keystoning. And driving this whole thing is a certified Android TV stick, which is pretty easy to install. This will give you pretty much all the apps you might want right out of the box to start watching any sort of content. Really, it's just a matter of popping off the back plate, inserting the HDMI cable right into the stick itself alongside the power cable. Now I will throw the screen sizes somewhere up here if you do want to check that out. But for myself, I'm going to be having this about 6 feet away to give myself a 100-inch screen. But I definitely don't have to do this since I can use the adjustable stand wherever I want to put it, which I'll be showing that in a bit. So depending on your setup, you could probably have this on the floor, a table, a desk, a stack of books, and of course a tripod like myself. Now, as you can see, it's actually super bright in this room, so I'm probably going to wait for the sun to go down a little bit more to really jump into how this projector looks. But in terms of brightness, this actually has 2000 ANSI lumens, so even during daytime visibility, it's really not that bad. Obviously, the darker your space, the better, but we'll get to that. I'll actually bounce between day and nighttime footage so you can see how they look differently, but either way, you're going to be having a good time. And honestly, watching just about anything on here looks great with its HDR support. And like I mentioned before, I've been having a lot of time constraints recently, especially with my newborn responsibilities as a second-time dad. So this projector has arrived at the perfect moment. With that though, I've been really enjoying my rewatch of all the Dexter seasons and jumping into the odd Ghibli film. What's equally important to the projector itself, I can say, is what you're watching, whether it's on your phone, tablet, laptop, or a projector like this. This image here is about a 100-inch screen with a projector at 6 feet away, and it truly looks badass, even during the daytime. And truly one of the best features I mentioned here is the autofocus and auto keystoning. Regardless of where you are, this is going to recalibrate automatically to the proper aspect ratio and screen size. In reality though, I probably won't be using it here in my living room since it's just absolute chaos at the best of times. Hey, can you watch the kids for a little bit longer?
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, so up here in my bedroom, this is what I'll probably really be doing with this projector here when I do need the times to get away and rejuvenate just a little bit. I don't have a lot of space up here, nor do I have a TV in my bedroom, so this is quite literally perfect. And whether it's on my desk here or on a stack of books on my bed, it still works, which is the best part about it. It doesn't have to look pretty, it's just gotta work. Now, with my PlayStation 5, this projector automatically jumps into gaming mode, which pretty much lowers the latency as much as possible. They're all super low, mind you, but I will leave something up here showing what the latencies are depending on your resolution you've chosen. For me, I'm personally gonna be using the 1440p most likely on my PlayStation 5 since it's the perfect balance between graphical fidelity and low latency. Jumping into games like Cyberpunk really do show off the HDR capability of this projector, which is again wildly impressive considering the size of it. Not to mention graphically, everything still looks great regardless of what's on screen. In a game like Ghost of Tsushima, you can see all the details in the sky, the grass, the clouds, whatever it is that's on screen, and it looks incredible. And since the latency is super low as well, any of those FPS games you might want to play are quite actually perfectly playable with some of the lowest latencies when it comes down to projectors. Now realistically, I'm not going to be hooking up my PC to this projector since I'm perfectly fine using my PlayStation 5, but if you really do want to game competitively on here, you probably could since you can get as high as 240 Hz at 1080p, which is still pretty impressive when it comes down to a projector. Now, would I really push rank on a gaming projector? Probably not, personally, since I would still rather just use my mouse and keyboard on a monitor at my desk setup, but if I really wanted to, I could. And if you are trying to get sweaty on your FPS games, there are some crosshairs too, which is always a bonus when it comes to FPS games. But mentioning that Type-C port once again, this is probably one of the best things any projector can have whatsoever, and BenQ truly does know their audience in this case, since what you're going to be doing with a portable projector like this is likely going into gatherings where you might have a Nintendo Switch and everybody's just going to be playing any sort of party game, which is probably the best thing about it. And depending on what you're playing, whether it's on your Switch, your PlayStation 5, your profiles will automatically swap between the two systems, and depending on what you're playing as well, you can get pre-optimized visual profiles from BenQ themselves, sort of like a visual recipe you might find on a camera or something. There are a ton of presets for the popular games out here, but here's Spider-Man 2 side by side before and after utilizing the profile. Overall, despite me utilizing this to escape every now and then, it's still a projector, meaning you're going to have the opportunity to have massive screens, and what better to do that than some cartoons when you really need to entertain some kids. It's just cartoons, but this does make it a little bit more special. So I'm set up down here in my basement because it's a little bit more dark and the sun isn't down quite just yet, so I'm gonna hop into my living room when it gets fully dark. That said, what are some of my actual favorite features so far personally? Truly, my favorite features I find are the ones that have actually benefited me on the everyday. The scaling options, for example, on here are just so easy to use with the remote. Even with two rambunctious kids being a little bit too excited and knocking this off kilter, we were up and running in less than 12 seconds. Just one of those things I didn't know was that good until you see it's that good. My next favorite feature would probably be the Type-C usability. The most used case would probably be connecting a Nintendo Switch, but I've found myself using my MacBook a little bit more with this specific feature. That's probably a little bit more odd, but when it comes down to gaming, I prefer my PlayStation 5 anyways. And most definitely, I have to mention the sheer portability. It's simply that great. Bringing this projector to the grandparents' house over the last weekend, I was able to actually put it to use in front of kids, in front of family, and everybody actually just enjoyed it. It wasn't like in the way, it wasn't a cumbersome process whatsoever. It was just there and it did its job. Easily enough to say, an intangible benefit is that kids just love projectors even if they want to sear their eyeballs. I did figure out after the fact that there is a feature to shut off the laser if anybody does get too close, so it is there if you want it, and I'll most definitely be using that feature next time. And lastly, one of the things that really impressed me was actually the sound quality coming out of this tiny beast. I wasn't quite expecting it, but this is a dual 8-watt setup, and it actually gets super full and loud, better than I thought it would. And obviously that's not just for the movies and media type thing, because that does a great job while gaming as well. When it comes down to first-person shooters, I'd probably still personally wear a headset because that's just what I've always been accustomed to, hearing all of my surroundings, but for everything else, I'm just going to use the built-in speakers. Now obviously, since the built-in stick is a Google TV, you don't have to do anything out of box. All you gotta do is log in, download all the apps you really do want, and after that it's pretty much set and forget. Now with all of this in mind, who is this projector really for? Honestly, that's kind of hard to answer because everything that I've mentioned that I absolutely love might be completely useless to you, and that's definitely okay, but this is pretty much the projector that just about everybody can find a use for. Whether that's going to be gaming, music, media, all the apps that you got built in, it's just great for all of that. The fact that I can fit it into my camera bag is one thing, but all the performance that comes with it, it's hard for me to really complain about it. Sure, it's not going to get as bright as the X3100i I mentioned earlier on, but I think I'm okay with that considering the size, and this will probably be my go-to projector going forward. And like I mentioned, in my case, it can be the TV in my bedroom when I want to escape from life a little bit and just be alone, or the exact opposite like I had this past weekend where it just sort of brought everybody into the same room. Whether that's going to be slideshows in the future or again blasting Bluey at 100% volume, I'm happy I have it and I'm happy it's there. Really, at the end of it all, it just ticks all the boxes between music, gaming, videos, everything in between. And yes, that even probably makes me the projector guy in my entire neighborhood, but I think I'm okay with that. Anyways, I appreciate you watching till the end. Till next time.